Well, I've been racing since 1933, maybe even a little bit before that. And for me to miss an off-soundings race is a sacrilege. You can't do that. If you miss an off-soundings race, there's got to be an awful good reason on why you can't go.
Bruce Lockwood, sailor, racer, friend. He never had a good excuse not to race. Twice a year, when off-soundings came calling in the spring and fall, Bruce and his brother John were there to answer the call. They walked the talk, lived the dream, and most likely invented the t-shirt. They certainly carried home the silver. Sadly, both have raced their final race, but their passion for racing still burns in those of us who challenge Mother Nature by going down to the sea in boats.
There's no one else that we know of that does this two-day race series in the spring and in the fall. And it's not just sailing around the buoys in Fisher's Island Sound. We're going to Block Island. And you explore Block Island at the same time. And when we go to the fall, you're going through the race and you're exploring a whole different territory of racing conditions. And then you begin to see that there's a lot of other people that you've seen before, and they're in the same boat. So you're never going to forget this stuff, and it just has gone on and gone on. And what's going to happen next year when we go to a race? And the anticipation of what's going to happen next is what makes it all go round.
The venues themselves are perfect. I mean, where else are we going to go as a practical matter that would have the space, the facilities, and all the other things that we need to have to accommodate, what, 500 sailors that come on an average race? At least, something like that. That's a lot of people that you got to take care of. Not every venue has the ability to handle that. It's good waters. Most of the time it's good wind. It's always a challenge, whether it's heavy air or light air, because we always have the current to worry about. And there's that thing known as Mr. Granite that we have to worry about too.
You met him?
Yes, I have on occasion.
To me, the appeal is it's more than going around a triangular course. There are more issues involved. There's the weather issue, there's the tides, and so there's so much more to it than knowing how to sail a boat fast. You have to know where to sail it.
You've got wind, you've got current, you've got velocity, you've got direction, you've got weight, you've got numerous different sails that you can choose from. There are a lot of factors that go into making a boat go fast. Strategy, tactics, they all come into play. That's all part of the adrenaline rush.
I have to say, when we go out and sail for off-soundings, we go and we know we have the best prepared boat that we can actually put out there. We know that when we go out there, the only thing that's going to screw up is us, not the boat.
I think the strength of the club is that it provides events that are different from most of the other events being run in this area and by UCSA. That's one of the nice things about it. I think the challenge, and it's a challenge to sailing as a whole, is continuing to get younger people involved in the sport and seeing the benefits of being out on the water.
There has been a tendency to get more extreme with some of the boats, but it also, I think all the boats that are being designed in recent years, and including the ones that you can cruise on, are generally higher performance. They're lighter. They've taken advantage of modern materials so you can have a better sailboat.
It's the people. The people of the club will hold it together, whatever the boats do. And if we can ensure that the younger generation are sailing the type of boats they want, there's no reason it can't succeed. We'll always try, for as long as we're around, we'll always try to keep the other boats in front of them. But the new designs are certainly the ones that they're going to be following.
Inspired by Edward Southworth, a handful of sailors, barely enough to crew a dinghy, created the Off Soundings Club in Springfield, Massachusetts in 1933. Today, the club has 500 members. Now, you might not care about history, but you would be remiss if you dismissed the traditions of an organization that has spent the last 80 years challenging its members, their guests, and their crews to find the fastest boats and enjoy the best of friends twice a year, far away from the day-to-day lives of quiet desperation that we all hate. Think about this. Today, you are part of the first day of the history that will be told by generations to come. You are the mirror image of those sailors who came before you, who sit around you, and who share the race course with you. They come in all kinds of boats, and they have all levels of skills. But they, and you, we, share a common thread that separates us from the rest of the landlubbers and links us forever to the competition, the camaraderie, and the unknown. A bond that is fueled by our passion to race.
To be able to get away and essentially take your watch and throw it in your duffel bag and just be away from the constraints of daily life, to be amongst friends. You know that just about everyone in the sailing community you have a bond with of some sort. It's I wouldn't say it's akin to being on a life raft with the same 6 people for a week, but I think there's a definite bond between most sailors, especially racers. They understand the focus that's required to put together a winning team.
Sailboat racing, at its most simple, involves starting, hitting the shift, going fast in the right direction, rounding the correct marks, finishing, then celebrating success or failure. It's a pretty basic formula for a weekend that is out of the ordinary. In 2012, it was played out for the 75th time by the Off Soundings Club. Friday in June, where else would you rather be than in the shadow of Watch Hill, jockeying for position for the race to Block Island?
The Friday race is a nice challenge because you know you have a destination. The race committee always does a nice job of trying to make sure we at least get to the island regardless of the conditions. So the course is usually set up in such a way that you know you can at least finish the race at the island even if it ends up being shortened.
What happens on the island stays on the island.
With the blast of the shotgun, the boats are off. 12 classes, none such to high-tech racing machines, wooden boats and fiberglass chariots of every size and shape, all carrying men and women with adventure in their minds, hope in their hearts, and a need for speed. It all starts with the mating dance of the lead-bottomed money gobblers. There is a structure to our racing that is unique because of the many classes, the longer distances, and different venues. It's a race that actually still requires a navigator. Why, that looks like a dusty set of parallel rules. And an iPhone? Is he checking the chart against the phone or the phone against the chart? Today, the phones have gone smarter. Can we say the same about the Navigesser? What is that he's drinking? Liquid GPS? There are no road signs out here. Bill Donovan used to say, a good navigator earns his daily ration of rum by keeping you off the rocks. I guess if he gets you to the destination, it doesn't matter much what he's drinking.
It's always a challenge. Seems like no matter how much time I leave to get from the Mystic River down to the starting area, that sometimes I'm cutting it a little close before the first start, not my start, but I like to watch the first couple classes get off the line, see what the course is that's posted, and kind of put some final thoughts on where I might want to go and how I might want to approach the race.
The interesting thing is we only talk about adverse weather. If we get into a social situation, we talk about the storms we've been through. If it's a 5 to 10 knot sou'wester, we don't talk about it. It was just plain old fun. Nobody got in trouble. But it's a challenge. No matter what the wind velocity, there's always an adverse current, tide. There's always the sea breeze coming in. Very complex, and that's what's fun.
The boats themselves are much more, shall we say, racing oriented and much less cruising oriented or accommodating the physical comforts. But on the other hand, there's an awful lot of us out there that have boats that we just really enjoy them. We like the way that they sail. We're not about to give that up, and Off Soundings gives us a venue to be able to competitively race them. And that's always a fun thing to do.
line racing is one thing, but life takes on a whole different meaning when you have to go around the mark. If you're lucky enough to break out from the pack, you may even have an easy time of it. Your focus is on crew work, shifting gears, and heading off on the next leg. But mark roundings can also be a gathering time, when the fleet comes together to share pleasantries on the day, to offer suggestions on where to go and how quickly to get there. It isn't quite like a prayer meeting. There can be invocations about hell and damnation, a raised voice or two, even casting aspersions upon a fellow competitor, or maybe your own crew, heaven forbid. It's all part of the passion to race.
People very much want to do well. I would say there's a great spirit of camaraderie that goes along with that, and being a Corinthian sailor about that. You know, we may push things a bit, but then you say, okay, no harm done, tip the hat, and you owe me a drink at the bar.
Well, a friend of mine who became friends early on when I first purchased the boat, he was a Connecticut fella, and we said that we wanted to get involved in some offshore sailing, and he mentioned off soundings. I didn't know really who off soundings was, and after investigating and finding out and becoming a guest, it was one of the greatest sailing memories I have. Just the professionalism and the amount of entries was nothing I ever expected. Until this day, it's just the group of sailors, the friendship, and the way it's all put together is the greatest sailing and the most fun that we have, I think, of any events on Eastern Long Island, and probably the Northeast for that matter.
There's always a next day on off soundings. No matter how bad or how good you were on the first day, you have to get up and do it again on Saturday. In the spring, it's the Around the Island race, the cornerstone of the weekend, and maybe the series. It is thrilling when the wind really blows, like a shot of adrenaline. When the wind is light and fluky, it can make you downright crazy, especially when shaking off the cobwebs from a long night of, let's say, exploring the island.
What happens on the island stays on the island.
Participants, we are requesting that as you check in this morning, you pass the starboard side of Nor'easter from the stern to the bow.
In 2012, there was just enough wind to send the fleet around the island. Well, just enough to send them most of the way around the island. It turned into a long day on the water.
Light air sailing, it's definitely more work. You're playing with every control on the boat to maximize it, and it puts the sailors and the boats to the utmost test.
With sailboat racing, the factors, they're not static. They continually change second by second, which requires the people on the boat to be acutely aware of the changes and make the proper adjustments. In a 3-hour sailboat race, you might change gears 300 times. It's an ever-present operation that you go through, and that's all part of the adrenaline rush. And off soundings gives it to you.
Try to keep the boat moving. Different things have worked over the years. We've been fortunate to occasionally have had some very good around the island races. Sometimes that's tacking off the beaches in front of the bluffs, seeing how close you can get before you're rock hopping. Last spring it was flying a taped seam spinnaker on a really close angle because there wasn't really any wind at all, and taking a huge jibe away from the island, basically following J109s, and then jibing back in, covering a lot of distance, but we kept the boat moving, and I guess people closer to the island weren't able to do that. So, and then sometimes it's just getting by the bluffs. If you can get through the dead spots first and get going again, then you can sometimes stretch things out a little bit.
Wild Horses finally passes Euphoria on the south side of the island. Horses went on to finish first overall. Light air and adverse current slowed the boats, but still, the boat-for-boat battles raged on. Amazing how vast the ocean is and how sailboat racers always seem to gravitate toward each other. A majestic sight. They look like model boats on a pond. Too bad they really don't have fast forward buttons.
10 miles away, literally, by a straight line from Old Lyme to Greenport. But it might as well be a half a continent away for most of us during our daily lives because we're all focused on the area that we live in. Gardiner's Bay, it's big enough to support our entire fleet. We can put 150 boats out there with no problem at all. It almost has a British Virgin Island feel to it because with all the islands around and the two peninsulas, and generally the tide is not a big issue, although it can come into play. Generally, the sea breeze is southwest. Just look over to New London and see if the cumulus clouds are building, and you'll know the sea breeze is coming. If it starts out in the north in the morning, you know damn well it's going to die. Dying northerly is most common. And whether it's going to clock around or back around is something you have to learn about.
2012 was another good year. Some old friends were lost, some new friends were made, and the seeds of new stories were planted. Members and their crews are the backbone of the Off Soundings Club. Memories are the lifeblood. Inevitably, the boats will change, the faces will change, and we know the conditions will change. But the Off Soundings Club is strong, and we will evolve. Too slow for some, and too fast for others. It's been that way for 80 years. As long as the wind blows, the tides shift, and the finish line beckons, and Block Island doesn't sink into the deep blue sea, there will be Off Soundings. There will be a place for those with a passion to race.